Now, I want to start this video with two things. First off, yes, Nemesis in the original Resident Evil 3 is objectively the best Stalker in the series. He was one of the first to do it, and he did it extremely well. And while I haven't played much of it myself, I've seen enough videos to agree with this statement, especially when comparing it to Resident Evil 3 Remake. Secondly, I am much more of a modern Resident Evil fan than I am of the OG games. I originally got into the series due to RE7, and been playing all the new entries as they come out, and I've had a blast. From the terrifying Baker household to doing Leon things in a Spanish village. Up until recently, I'd grown to see Resident Evil as more of an action horror franchise, something that does have some genuinely terrifying moments, but overall leans more towards action than actually being scary. That was until the release of Resident Evil Requiem, which in my opinion has the best modern Stalker enemy in the entire franchise. Something that I knew even as far back as the gameplay reveal that I had to talk about. See, RE9 is different from previous titles, allowing us to swap between first and third person, but also between two separate characters. Grace Ashcroft, a newcomer to the series who is an FBI agent investigating strange deaths related to Raccoon City. Her boss tells her there was another body found in the Renwood Hotel, the place where her mother was murdered decades ago, with Grace being sent to investigate. We also have Leon S. Kennedy, the returning 50-year-old man who's shown up numerous times throughout the franchise and is always doing some dumb shit like, "You're 50, bro!" This video isn't about him, but you're 50! While Leon's campaign focuses more on the action side of this franchise, Grace's aims to recapture that same feeling of RE7. A made-for-first-person, horror-based gameplay experience that I have grown to adore in my time with the game. RE9 is only a spectacular game in its own right, but from the Resident Evil games I've played, I dare to say it's the best in the franchise overall. But I've beaten around the bush long enough, because while the entire game is fantastic, there's one element that terrified me to my core on my first playthrough, and that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. One that takes center stage in a multitude of sections throughout the game, but starts when Grace wakes up in the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center. So, without any further ado, let's get started, shall we? I first want to talk about the lead up to Grace's time in the care center. As she explores the Renwood Hotel, this burnt down, crumbling labyrinth, she finds a recent photo of herself stuck to a wall alongside a key. Venturing further inside, she reaches room 204 and finds no one inside, with the bed being covered in photos of her and her mother. This prompts Grace to remember her mum hiding something behind the painting. As she goes to leave, however, we can see a figure shifting in the distance. When Grace does find the folder, she's attacked by a recently infected police officer and is forced to run into Victor Gideon. She's then kidnapped, and despite Leon's best efforts, he gets away, leading Grace to waking up bound to a gurney. This build-up immediately sets us into an unfamiliar environment. At this point in the game, we have no clue where we are or what to do. We have a vague idea that this is a hospital, but past that, we're left in a vacant ward as Grace panics and struggles to break free, only composing herself long enough to figure out what's going on as we exit out into these dark corridors. Despite its initial presentation, however, this area is almost relaxing, for now that is. There's soft rain hitting the windows outside, with the silence only broken by the occasional knocking or announcement. That is, until we flick on a light and see a hole in the roof, seemingly forcefully broken as something descended into the very area we're forced to roam. As we explore, we find other rooms to be pitch black except for one, the cherub room. As we explore, we find a fuse locked up that we need to escape, and a lighter. Before we can figure out what to do next, however, we hear a crashing from above, followed by rapid footsteps, as the chandelier shakes from the impact. Once again reminding us that something must have made those holes, as now with the lighter we can see more and more scattered around. Now exploring those darkened rooms, we find a children's storybook about the Shadow Ghost, a creature that avoids bright lights and has been watching us, with the pages telling us to stay in the light written in blood. And as we further explore this room, we find evidence showing it once belonged to two children, who both feared the Shadow Ghost. And this is a great way to not only set up the tone for this section, but to subtly hint at what we need to do once it sees us. We then find a note nearby that directs us to a screwdriver in a nurse's office. As we approach, however, we begin to get an almost sense of confidence that so far this area hasn't been so bad. Sure, it's a Resident Evil game, so something's bound to happen, but for now, we've been left relatively alone. That is, until we try and enter the nurse's office.
He's dead. Infected.
This scene is so good, but genuinely terrifying. The way we don't even hear her approach despite her size, and Grace is helpless but to watch as the corpse is devoured in front of her, and we're forced to run into the only light we see, our brief sanctuary of safety preventing this creature from getting us. The way the audio makes it seem like she's right behind us the entire time is so good, and even in third person, this scene holds up, as the added element of Grace stumbling over herself, tripping and falling as the creature behind her gains ground is absolutely horrific, and it goes to show the amount of effort that went into making the girl terrifying, no matter how you choose to experience Resident Evil Requiem. And this terror continues for the rest of the segment, as once we reach the nurse's office, we're forced to move a cart with multiple loose objects in order to reach a toolbox. As we do so, things begin to clatter and fall off, and the girl takes notice, walking past a window and clambering into the room we're in, as we're helpless to just hide and listen to her footsteps and snarls. She towers over us, seeming like she'll find us at any moment as we're forced to watch her chuck things around the room. And even after leaving, we're hesitant to come out, uncertain of where she might be. And when we eventually get the screwdriver, we're still not in the clear, as she smashes her way through a previously locked door and blocks off the one way we need to go. And this AI has to be one of my favorites in Resident Evil history, as it's smart enough to not only cut you off, but to enter the ceiling when you're not looking and drop down right in front of you, corralling you into the exact position it wants you in. And even if we think we're safe to re-enter the lit room, the girl stares us down before entering the ceiling and cutting off power to the room, plunging it into darkness and forcing us out of our safe zone, preventing us from abusing this mechanic as it knows exactly where we need to go, with it patrolling the very hallway we need to enter, forcing us to sit, wait, and listen before making another move. And even when we manage to sneak past her, the lights in the last remaining safe zone are destroyed, and as we grab the fuse, we're forced into one last encounter with her, barely making it out into the light before we're dragged straight back in and have to be saved by Leon. This first segment of the girl, no matter how you play it, immediately sets the tone for all of Grace's segment. There hasn't been an introductory scene to an enemy this good since Jack Baker in RE7. This somehow manages to recapture that same unfamiliarity and fear while feeling entirely unique. The way the game forces you to sit and wait, only relying on your hearing to avoid her, is spectacular. And near the end, how it begins to remove any safety nets we thought the game was so generous to provide is an added layer of intensity I love. It forces you to be reckless and make quick decisions that may or may not work out in your favor. But this isn't the last we'll see of the girl. Far from it actually. Because what makes a good Stalker enemy is their continued presence throughout most of the game, or a specific area. As we explore the rest of the center, we run into a young blind girl named Emily who is being experimented on. Her cell is placed right next to an empty one that has a hole in the wall, which we can presume belonged to the girl. And I'm sure we all know the stick by now. We go for the area, do some classic Resident Evil gameplay, but eventually we need Emily's help with a puzzle. And when she finishes it, the game does this.
Come here. Come here. Well done, Emily. Thank you.
This is the moment the entirety of Grace's segment has been building up towards since she escaped. Up until now, we haven't even touched Leon for the last few hours. It's only been about Grace and Emily escaping, as we're now forced to follow her into the basement. Dropping into the pitch black where chains litter the tight dark corridors, and a single shining safe room being our only sanctuary in this dark and echoey maze as we try and rescue Emily. Throughout this zone, we need to find 3 separate power sources and plug them in to gain power to the entire area. Doing so, however, requires us to be constantly moving, illuminating certain parts to gain access to other darkened rooms, with each area being an opportunity for the girl to ambush us, which she does almost immediately after we collect the first jolt plug, forcing us to hide at the very end of the hallway while she checks on Emily's cell. And while the animations look so good, it's just as creepy to watch her silhouette move as opposed to seeing her properly. Then having to watch and almost sneak past her as you can tell she's nearby due to her echoing chains. Not only that, but this area is crawling with zombies, making every venture out into the main area all the more tense as you try and make as little noise as possible while dealing with them. The key difference this time around being that Grace now has a weapon. Unlike the first times, reminded me a lot of House Beneviento and the way we were left helpless throughout that area, we now have a way to defend ourselves that, while mostly ineffective, still makes us more confident in traversing this area for a much longer period of time. As we explore, the game makes a point to have the girl show up multiple times. You'll most likely run into her while you're collecting the sock wrench. As she drops down, you can either distract her or barely sneak past her. There were also times I was turning on the lights in the area and she was about to enter or was already in, and just watching her scurry off was cathartic in a way, just forcing her out of a zone I want to be in. I think one of the standout moments of this character for me was in this section, as later on our way to the third plug, the floor beneath us gives way and we're forced to go through these massive pipes, with every side of it having a fenced off or barricaded zone, putting the idea in our mind of something breaking through and chasing us. But as we make our way through, nothing happens. So we collect the forklift key and make our way back, feeling slightly more confident and calmer. It's a quick jump scare, but goddamn did it get me. In an area where the lights are on and I'm meant to feel safe, is when the game decides to throw this one in there, and it's amazing. A little while later, the game decides to have her block us all from exiting a vent, which is also a really strong scene and definitely scared me the first time around. The girl is so well utilized to make the player feel on edge, with the combination of scripted encounters and natural ones sprinkled throughout the entire zone, making it feel like she's always watching. There were times when I'd enter a room and she'd come right behind me, or one of the standout moments when I was going to retrieve the last plug I needed, only to hear her shifting above. And once I pulled it out, she dropped down, blocking the vent and forcing me to hide, distract, or just run off. Either way, it was terrifying and I loved it. This section eventually culminates in one last chase, where Grace turns the power back on and carries Emily towards the elevator. The door being stuck on a plank as we push it away and the girl drops down from the ceiling, approaching as we narrowly avoid her. But, just as we think it's all over, the elevator shakes and bangs and we see her crawling beside us, smashing her hand and upper body through the elevator ceiling as we desperately pull open the doors, getting Emily out of it as the girl grabs Grace's leg in an attempt to drag us back in, before the elevator gives way and cuts off her hand, sending her plummeting back to the basement. If the first section was meant to replicate House Beneviento's helplessness and hide-and-seek style environment, then this section aimed to replicate that same feeling as avoiding Jack Baker in the household. There's a whole puzzle and set of enemies we need to deal with, while navigating this roamable AI designed to catch you off guard at our most vulnerable. Both are amazingly designed sequences that I adore replaying because each time I still somehow manage to find something new that scares me. Whether that be an unfortunately timed vent drop or the door breaking, which somehow got me all 3 times despite me knowing it was going to happen. But then we get to the third and final segment featuring the girl, which, while not the strongest or scariest, is arguably the most fun to play. Emily is injured after a helicopter crash, and it's up to Grace to put a stop to this thing once and for all. I played this segment using the Requiem, a high-powered revolver given to Grace by Leon with a limited ammo supply that I've been hoarding the entire game. This level focuses on us having to reactivate the power on a lower floor to activate the warehouse's sunroof. This section, while similar to the first in its smaller, tight corridors and more sound-based sneaking, differentiates itself in a single fact. We are now fighting back. The Requiem, while not powerful enough to kill the girl, can still stun her long enough to reactivate the power and turn on the lights. And despite her best efforts to catch us off guard or throw us away from the levers, Grace keeps getting back up because Emily needs her to. Eventually being able to get the last lever despite the girl being right next to Grace and opening the sunroof, melting her and killing her for good. RE9 is split into effectively 3 segments, one focusing on Grace with small Leon areas, another focusing mainly on Leon, and a third we swap back and forth between the two. And while the girl isn't an active part for all of it and doesn't have the same presence that Nemesis does chasing Jill for the RPD, she's still a major looming threat throughout that first third of the game. That first segment is some of the most terrifying and engaging Resident Evil gameplay I've personally experienced from the franchise. They always nail the sound design, general design, and AI of these enemies so well, and RE9 is no exception. The girl's rabid snarls that sound more like an animal than a human, along with the chains echoing the halls, are fantastic. Her design is also so interesting to me and calls back to a lot of the lore surrounding the character. Many of you remember how I mentioned the storybook and the 2 girls, and that wasn't for no reason. See, while I've been calling her the girl, this isn't actually her name. Her name was Mary, a test subject meant to activate Project Elpis, the main driving force behind the events of the game. However, due to multiple experiments and injections given to her alongside the psychological impact of the Shadow Ghost story, led to her mutating into what she is today, a creature of the shadows with a natural intolerance to light. Her body morphed and stretched in unnatural ways, with her skin cracking and breaking to show the bone underneath, as she still wears that same dirty hospital gown, now being covered in scars, blood, and lesions all throughout her body. I also love how you can see Grace evolve throughout these encounters, from clueless and terrified to motivated and capable, to finally being able to steel her resolve against a creature that has tormented her for hours on end. It's something I can't stop thinking about, as well it reflects the player's own experiences. We go from defenseless to, while having some guns at resource or having to use any on her, to finally being able to unload the bullets when saving up at that point. It also represents Grace's story. And then, I don't know, we ride up a skyscraper as Leon the next 2-3 hours. This game's a fever dream, it's amazing. RE9 is, in my opinion, the best mixture between the tenser, more horror-centric moments of 7 and 8, and the more action-heavy scenes shown in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 I haven't played, nor do I intend to, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. And while not nearly as scary as House Beneviento, the game still makes an effort to have Mary be an overwhelming, terrifying force, as while House Beneviento made me quit the game and shit my pants, RE9 still had me shitting my pants, but not to the degree where I need to stop playing the game. Just step away from my computer for a bit to stop my heart from exploding. And while I could gush for hours over RE9 as a whole, I felt these segments were what I really wanted to talk about. They were the defining moments of Grace's segment for me, and now I feel as punishment for making a semi-clickbait title, I need to go play the original RE3. Otherwise, I feel like I'm gonna get jumped on Twitter. Because If it's anything like the reaction videos I've seen, I think I'm in for a treat. I don't think this is a punishment, I think I'm gonna have a great time. But with that said, thank you so much for watching, and for the insane amount of support on my last video. It was a project I poured my soul into, and I'm glad to see it's doing well. And with that said, I hope to see you in where I make next. Bye bye!